Welcome to Fireside Giants, a featured podcast by Empire Sports Media. I'm your host, Alexander Wilson, and my co-hosts, Anthony Rivardo and Mike Iarapino. Give us a follow on Twitter if you haven't already. Alex Wilson ESM, Anthony_Rivardo, and Mike_NYY. Another day in quarantine life, and we are back at it on Fireside Giants to give you some updates. And essentially, we're going to be breaking down today Joe Judge's recent comments, what he had to say about the offense, and how they're dealing with virtual interactions with the players, and especially the rookies. We're going to talk about Evan Engram, and we're going to do some mailbag. We have a bunch of awesome questions that you guys left us on Twitter. So if you're listening, you'll hear your name hopefully, and we're going to be doing this a lot more because there's not much else to talk about. So your questions are really, really valuable to us, and we get to talk about things that you want to hear. But just to start out things, how are you guys doing, Mike and Anthony?
Wonderful.
One-word answers. I like it.
Yeah, pretty good. Not much to do. Not much to complain about. So, getting by.
All right. Well, that's pretty much the consistent answer for the past few weeks. I mean, as long as nobody has coronavirus, I think we're doing pretty well. We're in good shape so far. But if you're listening, hope you guys are doing well. And staying safe during these times. We're slowly opening back up, and sports are right around the corner. I heard baseball could be returning in July, a little solace in the action, and then NBA might be doing some tricky things in the NHL, hopefully coming back. Soccer is coming back in Germany, if you're interested in that kind of thing. And, yeah, professional wrestling, too, because nothing is better than two guys tackling each other, all sweaty and stuff. That's like the best way to transmit a virus. So we'll see how that works out for them. But, going back to football, Anthony, you just went over Joe Judge's quotes from today. I want to hear a little bit about what he had to say and, what we're looking for.
I did, yeah. So Joe Judge, let me pull these quotes up. He had a few pretty interesting quotes today. He talked about the new offensive scheme, the new defensive scheme under the new coordinators. He also talked a little bit about Marcus Golden, which we'll get into in a bit. And one of my favorite quotes that he had today was, "There's no shortcut to success." And that's just like a classic Joe Judge quote. That's exactly what I would expect him to say, right? A real detail-oriented man that he is. And I liked how he discussed the virtual meetings today, saying that it's a one-by-one box. The players can't hide, so he could just evaluate them and be very careful in particular with how they have their homes set up and whether they're making eye contact and all of that. So, Again, just Joe Judge being real detail-oriented and, paying close attention to his players, and I think that's really awesome. But another one of my favorite quotes is, "No carryover in any way, shape, or form from last year's offense into 2020. This is going to be a completely new offensive scheme under Jason Garrett. Daniel Jones is going to have to learn a whole new offensive scheme, so that could be challenging, but I think that the payoff is going to be really nice because I know myself included and a lot of Giants fans were very frustrated with Pat Shurmur's scheme over the past two seasons."
Yeah, that's a big quote. And I said a few days ago on Twitter that they're going to probably mimic everything, or at least try to, this specific concepts from Dallas's offense in 2019. Why? Because why would you go back to Jason Garrett and say, "Hey, Jason, why don't you bring that crappy offense you brought, 5 years ago when you were calling plays in Dallas? Why would you do that? Why wouldn't you be like, oh yeah, you have the number one pass offense in the league in 2019. Let's copy that a little bit. Let's take some of Kellen Moore's offense and establish that in New York." That's what I like, and that's kind of what Joe Judge said with this. But that's not to say that Saquon Barkley isn't going to get a lot of touches, because he is. The run game is going to be a focus. 12 personnel is going to be heavy. Last year we saw a lot of 11 personnel because Evan Engram got injured, and then Rhett Ellison had a concussion. So we were just really left with Caden Smith, who was previously like a 6th-round pick and then was cut by the 49ers. So it didn't really leave us with much adaptability from his standpoint, even though he did a great job. But now we have Toy Lolo, who's a big blocker who can get in the way for Saquon Barkley, and we have Evan Engram coming back healthy. So I'm pretty excited to see where this offense can go and establish these, really, really successful concepts that we saw in Dallas last year. So I'm pretty excited.
I feel bad for these players. Can you imagine having a one-on-one conference with Joe Judge, over the internet? I feel like that'd be so intimidating. I don't know what I would do, especially for a rookie. That would just scare the crap out of me.
Oh my God, yeah. Because Joe Judge is super intimidating. He kind of looks like he's trying to find something wrong with you. And imagine if you're in your house and you have some weird flag in the background, or something just like not like just you don't want anyone else to see or whatever it might be, or if you're even texting while he's talking to you.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of disrespectful. It's the head coach of the Giants, and if you're a rookie, you should be
like
pretty
if
much.
Your bed's not made or something, for instance. I feel like he would point that out. He'd be that type of guy and be like, "Oh, well, I gotta write this down as a side note." I'd be like so paranoid by everything, basically.
Yeah, honestly, that's a really good point. Imagine what kind of thing he would dive into. What he would extrapolate from a situation where he saw an unmade bed. Joe Judge is probably thinking in his head, this guy is messy. He's not going to listen. He doesn't like to start off his day on the right foot. We're talking about all these different things that probably factor into his style and how, because to be a good manager, you have to treat everybody differently. Everybody is their own person and it has their own weaknesses and strengths, and you have to essentially build a plan around each person. That way, they can develop the way you want them to. If you treat everybody equally on like a developmental standpoint, obviously ethically and morally everything should be equal, but from every perspective of a certain player, if you're treating DeAndre Baker the same way as you're treating Saquon Barkley, that's probably not a good thing, because we know Saquon's pretty much perfect off the field and does all the right things, and we know DeAndre Baker's sleeping in meetings, so they should not be treated on the same level. You know what I mean?
Yeah. He's going to make it sound like everyone's treated equally, and I think that's probably what they want, but we know that's probably not the case. Even they always say, every parent has their favorite, every teacher has their favorite student. I kind of believe in that stuff. So for Joe Judge to treat Levine Toilolo and Daniel Jones and from Saquon Barkley to anybody who we drafted in the 7th round, equally, I just don't see that being possible whatsoever.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think that is possible. I don't think it's probable. I think, there's obviously a talent discrepancy when you're evaluating them on the field, so that's obvious. He's going to evaluate a first-round talent and a 7th-round talent a lot differently. But then, of course, this off-the-field stuff, like with the Zoom calls, I think that was a really great point that you brought up with DeAndre Baker falling asleep in meetings. Obviously, he's going to keep a closer eye on him during those meetings than he is on Daniel Jones, or maybe not Daniel Jones because he wants to make sure that his quarterback is right, but Saquon Barkley, for instance, like you said, is perfect off the field. So I think that's a really good point that you brought up, Alex.
Thanks, Ryan. I appreciate it, man. Really appreciate it. So, but this is such a weird situation for Judge. I bet you he did not anticipate walking into a global pandemic when he was taking his first head coaching job, but that should tell us a lot about the type of person he is. We're talking about how he's evaluating players and, if their bet isn't made, but we should be looking at Joe Judge and saying the way he's managed so far with no interaction with players or media or anything has been phenomenal. He said the right things. That quote you said before, Anthony, what was it?
No shortcuts to success.
Yeah, no shortcuts to success. Those are the type of quotes that we didn't hear really from Shermer. And we're talking about a guy that was talking to the media and players in person. And Joe Judge is doing it all over Zoom and this one-by-one box and seeing into people's lives like that. So I've been really impressed to see him and his leadership abilities from a virtual standpoint. And if he can do that virtually, I can't imagine what it's going to be like in person at the team level in the facilities. He's going to have it buttoned up and locked down. These players are going to be listening to him and they're going to be doing the right thing. And that's the most important aspect. Like we saw, I think it was a quote maybe a week or two ago. He said that the type of players he's looking for are leaders and they have high characters. Or high character players, rather.
Not guys that call each other cancers in the locker room. We don't like that anymore.
No, okay, come on. You got to give them a break every now and then. No, we don't want any of those guys anymore. We don't want people... Janoris Jenkins self-sabotaging himself to get out of the Giants last year, to get off the team. We saw that. We can't be having people sabotaging the locker room or their own, careers to get out of a certain place. That says a lot about the franchise and the atmosphere going around and where they think the team is. So I'm pretty excited about his mentality and how he's kept everybody in check and in line. Just like the government, you have to have a system of checks and balances. Everyone has to be checking each other to make sure that nobody's out of line. Or, the federal government isn't taking too much money. The states have to be involved. Everything has to be communicative, and everything has to be connected on a very equal level, because otherwise players and coaches can get too much power, and that's where things, that's where you see guys like Landon Collins who think they're the best on the defense and start just obliterating little guys like Eli Apple who have played like shit. So, that's a big thing for the Giants, and that's where the locker room, issues have come into play. But what do you guys think the atmosphere in the locker room will be like in 2020 when things come back to, being in person and in house essentially? Do you think that it's going to feel different?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's going to feel a lot more like the 2019 Patriots than it will like the 2019 Giants. And I'm really hoping for that because it seemed like the Giants were very content with losing as long as they were making improvements behind the scenes, as Pat Shurmur would say. And that's one of the quotes that really pissed me off above all else that during last season. So I'm really hoping for it to be more like the Patriots, where they don't really say anything stupid because they're really not saying anything at all, and they're really just focused on 1 week at a time winning games, and just really focused. That's the main theme that I want to see next season, is that the team is focused, and so that's what I'm looking forward to.
It should be. They're a lot more stable. Like, they have a better coach now as compared to what Pat Shurmur was, especially dealing with personalities. And even speaking of personalities, Dave Gettleman is focused very heavily on bringing the right guys in the door here. I mean, the guys that were the troublemakers are basically gone now from that 2016 team. I know Eli Apple was shipped out pretty early on once they realized they weren't going to compete. So getting those bad apples, if you will, out of the door, it definitely makes. I actually did not even know I was going to do that, but wow, that was good. But yeah, it just makes the whole locker room atmosphere so much better, and just guys that are more enjoyable to be around and stuff like that. So you have to love it.
Absolutely. And one of the big quotes that I actually really liked from Judge today, he said, along with that, after saying that, they're going to be kind of playing a similar concept based on Jason Garrett's offense in Dallas, he said, along with that, it's going to take shape throughout the season. So a lot of it will change game to game. It won't be rigid. And that is pretty significant. And the reason is we've seen what the offense looks like under Pat Shurmur last season, and we saw what it looked like under Ben McAdoo. And we also saw that there were plays they were running over and over and over again. There was a lot of predictability. And defenses pick up on that very quickly at the NFL level, and you cannot beat good teams when you're running the same plays over and over again. So changing and adapting to your opponent and actually game planning is going to be very, very, very different this year, which I'm super, super excited to see, because that's what the Patriots did, right? Or do, rather. They game plan for every opponent, and they change their looks. So one of the big reasons that the Patriots are so successful is because they run the same concepts on the field, right? You see the same sets, and like 3 wideouts or whatever it might be. So we see the same sets going on, but all of the receivers are running different routes. That's the big thing, is creating predictability or the thought that there might be the same play going on, and then actually changing it at the line of scrimmage and the quarterback kind of being in control. And that's where Eli Manning was so great, and Anthony will appreciate this. He was fantastic at the line of scrimmage. Eli Manning was arguably the best quarterback at audibling and actually identifying coverages before the play. That's why he was so successful in the NFL. And if they can get Daniel Jones to that mental level, I think that this offense can be very, very effective. And we're going to see a lot of similar tendencies, especially, because Joe Judge was the wide receivers coach for New England. We're going to see a lot of similar tendencies and concepts that they ran, just in the sense that they're going to be very unpredictable, but look predictable. That's what you want. That's really what you want to see. It's all about confusion in the NFL these days.
Remember that quote from, I think it might have been Vernon Hargreaves in 2017 about Ben McAdoo's offense, and he told Odell Beckham, he's like, we know what you guys are going to run every play. Like, it was very alarming to hear that. Mm-hmm. Not sure if it was Hargreaves specifically, but it was some Buccaneers secondary guy that literally told Odell, we know what you're running here, and it just makes your entire offense like it's that much worse.
I remember that it was something with a certain hand signal that one of them would do before every passing play or something. Like, I don't even know how that could even be a possible thing, that you have a hand signal before every passing play. Like, that's an obvious cue to pick up on. But also I want to touch on what you said, Alex, with Eli Manning, and because I know that you tweeted about this recently because there was a certain report that came out. You mentioned how Eli was so good at the line of scrimmage and how we got to get Daniel Jones to learn how to be great at the line of scrimmage like that. And so you tweeted recently about Eli potentially having a role in the organization in the future. Mm-hmm. So what do you think that would look like?
That's a good question. The report that Eli, the quotes he gave essentially said he doesn't want to be a coach yet, at least. he wants to be more of like an advisory role, maybe something in the media department. Who knows? But I think he would be a brilliant quarterback coach. The guy is so knowledgeable, and I think he would be a great secondary coach. I don't think he would be a good head coach. And the reason is he doesn't have that fiery mentality. He's not outspoken like that. But I think he's a guy that quarterbacks can soak up knowledge from. And him, dedicating all of his time towards helping a guy like Daniel Jones instead of preparing himself would be extremely beneficial. And the mental aspect of the game is so important for a quarterback. I was just watching a little bit of film on Daniel Jones today and his development. And as the season progressed, he began to recognize a lot of coverages and looks that he was throwing interceptions earlier on in the year. He had a few games where he had multiple interceptions, and especially against the Vikings. He started to identify those coverages and actually throw the ball quicker into open windows and identify those things that he wasn't seeing before, which was super, 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 exciting to see, because with a quarterback, the year 2 is essentially where you see the biggest jump. And a lot of times, the sophomore slump takes effect, and you don't see that jump that you want to. But I think Daniel Jones this year, especially with an upgraded offensive line, is going to see a nice little boost.
Yeah, people wonder why these quarterbacks now are playing into their 40s and even late 30s. I think you have such an upper hand if your quarterback can diagnose what a defense is doing. Like, I personally think Drew Brees has lost a lot of his arm strength in the past couple of years, but that guy is still very effective. One, because of his accuracy. That and just knowing what the defense is going to run. And it's just like it makes the offense's job just so much easier as a whole if you have a quarterback that knows what a defense is going to do.
Yeah, I think it would be really awesome if Eli was part of the coaching staff, but I don't think it'll ever happen. I just don't think that's what he wants. And I do think Jerry Shapwinski is really awesome. I think he's going to do a great job with Daniel Jones. But I think for Eli, what he would probably end up doing is something similar to Carl Banks and Sean O'Hara, how they work with the Giants in the media department, like you said, breaking down film every week or whatever for YouTube and stuff. And I think that would be pretty cool, because that's like a huge player to have, obviously working with the media. But also, since we were talking about Daniel Jones, I hate to keep bringing us off track, but I want to bring these stats up that I found by this guy Ben at DJ Got Next on Twitter. Daniel Jones on the road, 18 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, all against New England in 6 games played. Daniel Jones at home, 6 games, 6 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. What do you guys make of that? Because it's almost like I couldn't believe it when I read it, but it's real. It's pretty incredible stats.
Well, that's like I said last week. I don't think MetLife Stadium has a home field advantage anymore. It's windy, it's rainy, it's not Tampa Bay where it's sunny and nice. Too. Exactly. It's neutral. And, I just don't think DJ, you also have to factor in the injuries. It could have been, the injuries were just happened to occur around those home games for some reason. But with that being said, when you're away, there's not as much pressure, having played sports, in high school and college, I know I felt more comfortable playing away sometimes because nobody was expecting anything of me. There was nobody watching me. They just wanted their other team to win. They were watching the other team more than they were watching me, so I didn't feel that immense pressure all the time. But I don't know. How do you guys feel about it? It could really be so many different factors.
I'm looking at who the Giants played at home last year, and there were some tough matchups. I mean, the Bills secondary, you have the Vikings secondary, which I guess had rough moments last year. But yeah, you look at the schedule, there were some tough games on here. The Cowboys, of course, the Packers secondary is young and pretty good. So yeah, there are some tough matchups for sure. But I think a lot of it has to go back to what you just said. I think when you're away, you don't have those expectations and the pressure. Of course, I'll never know what it's like to play in MetLife in front of tens of thousands of people. Yeah. But it has to be so much easier on the road. I mean, you're basically there just to spoil those people's day and not basically have all these expectations of the home crowd around you.
Yeah, and I also wonder, and I hate to keep using this guy as a scapegoat, but I wonder if it had a lot to do with Pat Shurmur and how he felt with the expectations being at home. Because obviously the Giants fan base turned on him pretty quickly and was really unhappy with him. So that could have affected his performance, which could affect the play calling and in turn affect Daniel Jones' performance. So that could have been another one of those confounding variables.
Remember when Pat Shurmur ran that, it was a 3rd and 17, I think, against the Cardinals and ran that draw play, and everyone wanted to crucify him on the spot.
Yeah. Pat Shurmur did a lot of things that made me want to crucify him on the spot.
He did some things,
Some things. I don't even want to talk about them simply because I feel like we're past them, right?
Right.
And we're on to worse times now. So with quarantining and global pandemics, we're on to much worse times. But with that being said, Joe Judge is going to bring a level of discipline that we haven't seen in probably half a decade, which, hopefully can bring this team some sort of success. We really need to see the Giants take a step forward in year 2 for a lot of these rookies from 2019. Oceanic Jimenez, DeAndre Baker, Julian Love, Dexter Lawrence, Daniel Jones, Corey Ballantyne. There's so many. The defense is littered with the infantry. Infant because it's a pun, So we need to see success. And a big part of that is Judge eliminating those in-game gaffes, right? I think he's going to be much better in that category. And what he's saying today.
I'm looking right now. I think the Giants' oldest starting defensive player might be Kyler Fackrell, if I'm looking at this correctly.
Yeah.
Because he's, 28 years old or 29 at most? Like, he's the oldest guy on this defense now.
I just did that. I just posted about that a few days ago. The oldest guy that I mentioned in the secondary is James Bradbury at 26 years old.
Yeah, right.
26 years old. That's 3 years older than I am. So, we're looking at a really young foundation in the secondary, which is a really good thing because that means they actually rebuilt it. There's not 30-year-old veterans like Antoine Bethea back there. So
I think sometimes it's good to have veteran players. I know Gettleman did this in Carolina,
it's good.
Especially in 2015. They had a bunch of veteran guys on that team that were still pretty good. They still had it, I think, Peanut Tillman, and they had Cortland Finnegan as well. So they had some guys in that secondary, veteran players that were still getting it done. But the guys we've had here in the secondary that were veterans, we're not getting it done. I know Michael Thomas had some good moments at safety, but he was more of a backup.
He's more of a special teams. Yeah.
He signed that guy from the Steelers. I think it was William Gay, who was probably 33, 34. He didn't even make the team. So there were attempts to bring in some veteran guys, and it didn't work. But now this team is so young, and just because you're young doesn't mean you're talented, but at least they have that potential to just at least have a good year defensively next year, because we don't know what we're going to get from a lot of these guys.
Yeah. And reflecting back to something Joe Judge said a few weeks ago, he said, we don't want our other players coaching our other players. Yep. We want our coaches to coach the players. That is what their job is. That is what they're there for, which is music to my ears because it seems like we've been bringing in Jonathan Stewart and Antoine Bethea to coach rookies this entire time. I'm like, hold on a second. Why are we bringing in Antoine Bethea, who's been primarily a free and strong safety, to coach DeAndre Baker, who's a cornerback? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm like, don't we have a coach for that? He's a rookie. He should be learning from the coaching staff. That is absurd to me. So let that be known. That is a huge red flag that Joe Judge immediately addressed. He immediately went in there and said, this is not going to work. We are not signing players to coach rookies and younger secondary guys or whatever position it might be. They are supposed to be learning from the coaching staff. That is their job and why they're on the team to begin with. So big thing. He didn't really talk about that today, but something that's worth saying in the moment. But is there any other quotes, Anthony, that you noticed that stood out?
Sure, let me pull them up. But real quickly, I want to say that I do unequivocally agree with you, but I think there's one exception to the rule. And I know I've said this, and it might be the unpopular opinion, but I am a fan of Alex Tanney on the roster just because of his relationship with Daniel Jones. Right?
Quarterback's different, though.
Exactly.
Quarterback is different because it's a lot more mental and a lot more diagnosing and seeing. Like, Alex Tanney might be brilliant at diagnosing, coverages and actually seeing the game on an intellectual level, but he might just not be that athletic. You know what I mean? Right. Like, he might just not be a good quarterback because he doesn't have the athletic attributes to be. But mentally, he could be extremely intelligent and see all the things that Daniel Jones needs to. With his veteranship, I think that's probably what you're hitting at, and it makes a lot of sense from that perspective.
Exactly. So, for some more Joe Judge quotes, we could quickly talk about the Marcus Golden quotes. I thought those were pretty interesting.
Yeah, that's good.
He said they have talked about possibly adding him to the roster. That's a quote. And they, quote, have an interest in him, which we know because they did place that that weird tag that nobody uses on him, that $5 million thing. So, I don't know. I'm pretty interested in that. I don't think that Marcus Golden is as much of a priority as a lot of people do, because I kind of think that we kind of already replaced him with Kyler Fackrell, so it's not really a big deal if we let him walk. But I know there's a lot of fans who really want to bring Marcus Golden back, so I don't know if one of you guys is one of those fans, but you can discuss that?
How do
I'm
you feel,
100% with you, actually. I'm one of those people that, like, don't really want Marcus Golden back. Like, I'll take him, the more the merrier. But at the same
Right.
time, I think Tyler Fackrell was fine. I can do exactly what he did last year. Like, there's only 2 outside linebacker spots to start. Like, how many of these guys do you actually need? So I think O'Shea Zimenez is going to have a really good second year as well. So I don't want to stunt his development. So that's a big thing. Even have Lorenzo Carter behind them. So, I mean, like, there's really no point. If someone goes down in, like, the middle of the season, then sure, bring Marcus Golden if he's not on a team, but I do think he'll be somewhere, obviously. I'm sure someone will get hurt, but the man deserves a better contract, deserves a job by now, but unfortunately it hasn't happened yet. But taking him for $5 million is something that's hard to say no to, but I don't think the Giants necessarily need him right now.
Right.
That's exactly how I feel.
So I wouldn't say I don't want him. I think he is welcome. I would welcome him with open arms based on, he has a high motor. He produced 10 sacks last season. He got after the quarterback. And with our improved secondary, they're going to allow more time for our pass rushers to get into the pocket and disrupt the passer. So that's another point that I want to mention. But when it comes to Marcus Golden, we're talking about a contract that's 110% of his 2019 deal. So he's going to make about $5 million, as you guys mentioned. This is where I see the team kind of dealing with these negotiations. They're going to say to him, we're going to bring you back on that free agent tender. But if another team offers you a contract for, let's say, multi-year deal, $7 million a season, we're going to, let us know. And we'll see if we want to match it or not. Worst case scenario, they bring him back for 1 year on $5 million. That's a joke. $5 million is nothing. They just got, Cooper Rush for $2 million. That's it's $5 million in the grand scheme of things is not much at all. And I would love to have him back to help. He is a veteran, so, he can produce a little bit. And at the same time, I don't want to put all of our eggs in one basket with Kyler Fackrell. I know we had a good 2018 season, but one season of production doesn't scream efficiency to me or productivity. I like to have depth pieces, and I like to have backup, just in case. We don't know for sure if O'Shea Zimenez is going to break out. I think he is as well, but we can't guarantee those things. So I imagine that having, reserve options and guys like Marcus Golden there just in case can only be a good thing.
They could trade him too, right? I'm thinking right now, if they brought him back, I mean, I'm sure somebody would take him, right? I mean,
they
it
could
wouldn't
trade
make
him
sense to just sign him, but they can get him for $5 million. It's like, why not?
If it locks down, I don't know when the finalized date is that all the contracts become guaranteed, but I imagine they could trade him at the deadline if they wanted to, but it would really be, they wouldn't get much for him. I mean, a team, let's playoff bound, for example, is like, okay, we could use an extra edge rush piece. Let's go trade for Marcus Golden, who's on a 1-year deal. So essentially we're renting him for 5 games. And we don't know, and if he's having an okay season, then, maybe we can get a 6th round pick out of it. It's something. It's not nothing. We got a bunch of late round pick guys this year, so we'll see what happens with them. But but that's part of the Patriot way. They managed to get things out of nothing. They create draft picks. They create cap space somehow. And that's kind of what Joe Judge is, all those really, really small details that they're gonna work and try to maximize everything. We'll see what happens with tight end Evan Engram, which we're gonna talk about in a second. But yeah, that's my perspective.
Yeah, and I also want to say that I almost think because of the defensive scheme, and this is going to lead into the next quote I'll bring up, it might be a little unnecessary to bring back Marcus Golden because of the way that Patrick Graham loves to scheme pressures. He doesn't really like to rely on certain players. He likes to rely on his scheme to bring the pressures with his really impressive blitz packages. So the next quote that I'll read is Joe Judge said that Patrick Graham was, quote, their top choice this offseason. He called the Dolphins and asked for a meeting, and they granted it, and instantly he was like, yeah, this is the guy. That's who they wanted, and he said that Graham's scheme will follow closely with what he did in Miami last year, and it will be multiple by game plans. So it could change week to week. It could be a 3-4 one week, a 4-3 next week, a 5-2 the week after that. It's going to be a very interesting, diverse defensive scheme, and like I said, as we've discussed before, a lot of blitzing is going to come out of the scheme based on what he did in Miami last year.
Okay.
It makes me excited. I want to see it. It's just like I cannot wait until football season, even preseason. I just want to see this on the field and see what happens exactly. I mean, it's fun talking about all these different looks and stuff like that. And there are videos out there of like him showing blitzes and then pulling guys back and then acting like they're in zone and bringing blitzes and a bunch of crazy stuff like that. So that's definitely good to confuse these younger quarterbacks and stuff. But at the end of the day, I just want to see it already.
Yeah, I'm going to be the objective one and say that I don't think his defense is going to be that great in year one. And the reason being is that his defense, like you said, Anthony, is super, super complicated. Right. They could be switching entire schemes 1 week and 1 week there and 1 week here. I think that's going to be difficult for some of the younger players to process, especially because all of them are essentially learning a new defense right now. And they're going to have to learn how to switch from a 3-4 to a 4-3 and what they're going to do here, what they're going to do there. And another thing that you hit on, he does utilize very diverse blitz packages. He uses linebackers and safeties frequently. Last season, he played man coverage 50% of the time, and he blitzed, I think, on third down 41% of the time. So we're going to see a lot of blitzes on third down. We're going to see a lot of McKinney and Jabril Peppers moving up towards the line of scrimmage and then dropping back into coverage. Maybe one of them drops, one of them rushes. Delayed blitzes. It's going to be super, super diverse and complicated, which I think will take a few weeks to get a grasp on. But if he's there for more than 1 year, which I imagine he will be, we should expect to see that second year with all those young players in tow to be much better. So I think there will be some troubles in 2020, but 2021, we should see a huge improvement.
The one thing that got me excited, actually, I'm looking up, Blake Martinez, I think, had, 4 or 5 sacks under Patrick Graham. So I think when it comes to linebackers blitzing, that's something I'm very excited for. I mean, I know we talked about scheming pressure and creating pressure. If you handed him a Khalil Mack, I'm sure he'll take him. But at the same time, the Giants, they have to create pressure based off this roster they have, unless O'Shane takes this giant leap, which I do think could happen. But it's hard to rely on that, as you guys said before.
Right, and I think that's a perfect thing that you brought up, and I'll bring up the stat to back it up. In 2018 with Patrick Graham, Blake Martinez was brought on 61 blitzes. He had 5 hurries, a quarterback knockdown, and 5 sacks. And then 2019, he was only brought on 24 blitzes, so that's a drastic drop-off between the two. Yeah, more than cut in half, and he only got 3 sacks and 2 quarterback hurries with no quarterback knockdown. So very important, and like I said, Patrick Graham loves to scheme blitzes with his personnel, so I'm really excited about that.
Anthony, was that a positive thing you just said about Blake Martinez, or am I crazy?
It was more of a positive thing about Patrick Graham. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, no, it was a positive thing about Blake Martinez. I'm not going to be that excited about it. Yeah, I think he can be a good blitzer in the right scheme. I wasn't a big fan of the signing, but I think that anybody can be good with a certain coaching staff and scheme around them if they play to their strengths. So I definitely think that he has a role to play. I just don't think I personally would have invested that money for him to play that role if it were me, the GM. But I'm not the GM. I just talk on a podcast. So.
Well, you never know, man. You never know. But regardless, I do want to dive into Evan Engram for a few minutes before we take some mailbag questions. Mike, I want to let you start with Eazy-E. I know that's Eli's name, but he's gone now, so we're going to call Evan Engram Eazy-E. Maybe easily hurt E. Let's see. Let's see what you have to say about him and what your expectations are for him in 2020.
So we're just doing player projections, right? I just wrote down some stats real quick that I could see happening next year. I'm not going to go as crazy as I did last year with Evan Engram. I have some tempered expectations now. I have him down for 12 games, 50 receptions, 550 yards, and 4 touchdowns. Can he exceed that? Absolutely. Can he do worse than that? Absolutely. That's kind of the fun about a player. Like a guy like Golden Tate does the same thing about every year. A guy like Evan Engram, the range of things he can do is just so drastic. So it's kind of exciting when you talk about a player like that. If we get a healthy season out of him, of course he could have 800 yards and 10 touchdowns. You know what I mean? So it really depends. But I'll be generous and give him 12 games played next year.
That's fair. Anthony, what do you think?
I'll say this is the year that he plays 16 games. I'm going to hold out hope for Evan Engram. He'll play 16. Wow. He'll get around 80-something targets, 60-something catches maybe, and he'll end up with around 700 yards. That's going to be my optimistic projection. Okay.
So I will say over the first 3 years of his career, he has pretty significantly dropped off every year. And that being said, he went from playing 15 games as a rookie to playing 8 games in his third season. He's only 25, so he is super young. His catch rate went down from 2018 by about 6%. He was at 70% to about 65%. I think he'll play about 12 games as well, like Mike said. That foot injury, it scares me, personally. He's coming off a big surgery, and he was in crutches for, like, months. And he's had other injuries before. This is not the first time, or the first one. So I think 12 games, I'm going to say I think he's going to get a lot of action in this offense because Jason Garrett seems to use tight ends a lot. I think he's going to go about 70 targets. 60, I'll say 60 No, I don't know. This is difficult because his numbers are so his numbers are so vastly different every season, which is why it's really hard to predict what he's going to do. So I would probably say like 70 targets, 50 receptions, and I'm going to go with like 600 yards and maybe 4 touchdowns. I think they're going to use him a lot in the red zone because he's a pretty big target. And you know what Jason Garrett likes to use Jason Witten, and I really am happy Jason Witten's no longer playing against us anymore. But then again, he comes back every other season. I don't understand how, but he does. He takes a break for a year, then he comes back, and then we're revolving on the same thing all over again. Yeah. But that's my prediction. I think he's going to have like a middling season compared to his other 3.
You know, you mentioned Jason Witten, and I looked at his stats to help form my projections because I think that will obviously have some similarities because of the new offense. And now I'm looking at Jason Witten's stats. How did this man have 147 targets in 2012 as a tight end and not lead the league in targets? This is crazy. These stats, 16 games, like just every single season he played all 16. It's really impressive. Yeah, the guy, I'm very happy he's not on the Cowboys anymore.
Him and Tony Romo are best buds.
Yeah.
Oh, underneath
Tony
route.
Romo, don't bring him up. We've got a secret Tony Romo fan. Just kidding.
Well, no, Witten always was that underneath route guy. He would just right across the middle and just drop down, anchor down in the middle of the field, and every time it would just be that kind of like that Eli Manning and Saquon Barkley effect.
Just sits in the zone and just goes like this. And like, all right, pass. And then Romo hits him in the chest, and there's another first down. What was that game? Exactly. He had like 17 receptions against us. It drove me freaking crazy. What was that, like 20? That might have been 20.
Every game ever.
That's the game there was one in Dallas. Became a thing. Do you guys remember Wani Unga?
Yeah,
yes, I do. He was a linebacker. He was Hawaiian.
He was a linebacker for us for a year, and we found out about him that week 1 game where he just got torched by Jason Witten and ended up giving up the game-winning touchdown to Jason Witten.
Yeah, he was like he looked like a knockoff Troy Polamalu, and he was just that.
Yeah, and he made I remember early in the game he made some really good tackles as a run defender, and I was like, whoa, did we just find something here? And then he just started getting torched by Jason Witten. I was like, okay, never mind.
Yeah, they just tired him out. They just kept targeting him, and when you have a guy like Jason Witten who has a huge frame. He can't talk, but has a huge frame, and he just would sit down in the zone and like you said, Mike, he would just be like, "Here, throw me the ball," and he would just stand there for like 5 seconds and they still couldn't stop him.
My favorite part about him is no one can tackle Jason Witten. It was always the ref having that the forward progress whistle. It felt like no one could ever tackle Jason Witten.
Nobody.
Guys would just go on him, and he would just keep going backwards, but they would not get him to the ground.
It's also more of a Giants problem. We haven't been able to tackle in years.
Yeah.
We realize, you have to remember, we had Alec Ogletree playing middle linebacker for the past 3 seasons. Our cornerbacks have been absolute, for lack of a better term, shite. Janoris Jenkins missed some tackles too.
He got juked by what's his name, Ryan Fitzpatrick last year. That same Alec Ogletree.
Oh yeah.
Oh my God.
Ooh.
I remember that one.
Where is he at now? Did he sign with anybody or still a free agent?
No. It's actually funny. I have a highlight video of him, and a lot of Packers fans are like, "Oh, bring him to Green Bay," and I'm like,
"Yeah, bring him to." I'm like, "Yeah, send him to Green Bay." No, send him to the Dallas Cowboys. Let him get a taste of. Now they got Leighton Vander Esch and what was his name? Jalen Smith. Yeah, they have nasty linebackers. So I would like some of those if we could dip our hand in the linebacker pool next year. But that leads me to our mailbag section. And we have some awesome questions by you guys that left on Twitter. So the first one that I really want to start off with is, what are the chances Matt Peart is starting by week 8 at right tackle, I assume? So, Anthony, I'm going to give you this one since you're the big Matt Peart guy.
I am the big Matt Peart guy, and I think he has the ability to start at week 8, but I don't think he will. I think the chances are really slim to none. I think it would take a lot of injuries for that to happen just because of the depth that we have at offensive tackle. You think Nate Solder, and Andrew Thomas are going to be the starting offensive tackles. And I guess in this situation it'd be, what if Nate Solder got benched? Well, then I think probably next man up would be Cameron Fleming or Nick Gates, just because of seniority. Like, they're older, they've been in the league longer, and obviously they were just recently, Cameron Fleming was just recently signed for basically this scenario. I think that they're just going to leave Matt Parrott as the developmental piece and hope that he's ready to start next season, and probably just leave him on the bench this year.
I 1000% agree with that, actually. I think the only way he sees action this year is like maybe if in like week 15 or 16, if they're just completely out of it by then and they just want to throw him in and see what happens. That's the only way I see him playing this year, or just the crazy amount of injuries. You know, if Fleming goes down and Solder and all these guys,
right,
then I can see it happening. But if people stay relatively healthy, I don't think it's going to happen until the very end of the season, until they're mathematically out of it, basically.
Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, I think Parrott is probably a developmental guy this year, but Week 8 is a pretty good sample size to see Nate Solder at right tackle. I think they'll probably put Cam Fleming in there before they put Parrott there, personally. But at the same time, if the Giants are in a position to win, you know, they're not looking too good, you might as well start developing some of your younger guys and throwing a guy like that in there. Maybe give him half the game, just get him some reps, just to get just experience really helps. So I think that he won't be playing by week 8 personally, just because, like you guys mentioned, they have depth there already, and Nate Solder is an experienced tackle. But I wouldn't rule out maybe him playing the last 3 or 4 games of the season.
Yeah,
I could see
he might get Julian Love treatment, even worse.
I could see. Well, because they're going to cut Solder anyway. Maybe they'll just sit him like, okay, we're going to cut him anyway. We're not winning that many games. Let's just give Parrott some time to develop. By the way, that was from 5BD Wens on Twitter. The next question by Alyssa7 Danielle. What are your thoughts on DeAndre Baker's development heading into year 2? What do you expect from him? I expect him not to sleep in meetings.
That's a good answer.
I'll say I think he finished his rookie season really strong. He started to show a lot of improvement towards the end of the year, so that obviously bodes really well for his future and instills a lot of confidence in me. I think obviously that off-the-field stuff, like sleeping in meetings, he has to get that fixed immediately. Otherwise, he'll never be a good player if he doesn't fix that. And but I don't know. Coming out of college, he was so talented as a man press corner, and then we barely saw him play like man press. We saw him play a lot of zone, and he was always confused, probably because he was sleeping in meetings. But I think this is a defensive scheme that really plays towards his strengths specifically, because it's such a man-heavy scheme, a blitz-heavy scheme. So that's obviously a lot more press coverage, because usually you press and blitz together. So I think he's really set up for success here in this new scheme. It's just about whether or not he decides to take the action necessary to improve himself and improve this year. But I think ultimately he will, just because of the players around him and obviously the new coaching staff around him. I think that they'll do everything they can to get the best out of him, and I think we'll see a lot of improvement from him this year.
Yeah, a lot of things went wrong last year, whether it was the sleeping in meetings, not getting the playbook, but I do think he has everything around him this year to succeed. I mean, he might have came in last year with some high expectations. You're a first-round pick. You're supposed to be the guy for the future, but now they signed James Bradbury, who we assume is the cornerback 1. So there might be less pressure on him this year, something I'm happy about. We talk about the man-heavy scheme. That's another good thing for him. And I keep thinking back to that Devontae Parker matchup against the Dolphins. Did a fantastic job that game. He played very well against the Eagles in one of those games. I don't know if it was the at Philly or home Philly, but whatever it was. So there was a lot better things from him, especially after Janoris Jenkins got cut. So I don't know what the correlation is there, but he at least showed signs, especially the final quarter of the year, of him being one day a really good cornerback. So my expectations are pretty high. He's a very talented player. He sometimes gets a bit handsy, but other than that, he has the athletic ability to be a really good cornerback in the NFL, and that's what I expect in the future, even next year.
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, I'm looking at DeAndre Baker, and Kirby Smart just said don't give up on him just yet. And we have to imagine Joe Judge probably looked at him, when they played the Patriots last year, and saw a cornerback that was getting torched pretty much on every play. However, he did progress pretty well at the end of the season. We saw some actual development. And Anthony, like you mentioned, Patrick Graham plays a very heavy press man scheme. And last season he played 50% man coverage, which is a lot more than James Betcher used in 2019. So that should help Baker's development a lot. I think that we're going to see a different player in 2020. I think we're going to see a player with a little bit more humbleness, because he is known. His biggest red flag coming out of college was that he was cocky and that he was arrogant, essentially, because he thought he was the best. And he went into the NFL and got torched week in and week out, and he gave up on a few plays we saw, and that's not what you want to see in a rookie. So I think Joe Judge is going to come in there and really hopefully discipline him and make him know that he has to earn his spot, because there are players behind him that are vying for starting reps. You still have Ballantyne, you still have Beal, who's unknown. There are guys there that could easily swing in and take Baker's starting position.
Julian Love's another one.
Julian Love is another one. There you go. So, I think they're going to put the pressure on him. They're going to say, you got to perform, otherwise we will replace you. No position is safe, and that's what Joe Judge said a few weeks ago as well. He said no position is safe. Everyone is competing for a starting spot, and that's the right thing to do. So I think that he'll have a much better season, but, you can't guarantee anything.
It's well said.
Aside from Baker, on to the next question. We're going to do maybe 2 or 3 more. Let's see. We have, what sort of creative run game do you envision? By J.D. Ellis. What do you think, Anthony?
I think a lot more pre-snap motion. I think that's really important now. I think it's become a lot more important over the past couple of years when you look at teams like the 49ers and the Chiefs. And I think the Cowboys do like to use pre-snap motion, and they're going to start using it more in New York now with Jason Garrett. So I think it's just really important that you do that. You use the pre-snap motion because you move players literally out of the way before the play even starts. So that's like no-brainer. And I think Jason Garrett, he's going to make it a point to run the ball a lot with Saquon Barkley, of course. I think he's the most talented running back in the NFL, and I really think that he could take that huge step this year based on the scheme that's run. And like I said, pre-snap motion I think is the key to the running success for an offense in the NFL nowadays, and Jason Garrett does like to do that a lot more than Pat Shurmur did, who rarely even used it. So I definitely think that that's something to keep an eye on, and it can really benefit the team this year and every year after.
I expect a lot of old-fashioned stuff. Now, this is me going off the 2012 Jason Garrett offense, but I think I saw a quote where they kind of said we don't expect things to change from Jason Garrett's previous offense. So maybe it's could be last year they're talking about, or the last time he was calling plays. I don't know.
Right.
But I expect to see more of an old-fashioned style, I formation, quarterback under center, using a fullback, 2 tight ends, stuff like that. I could be wrong about it, but that's kind of what I want to see. I think the Giants have a team right now that could have the offensive identity of just pounding the football down your throat 25, 30 times a game and being very good at it. So that's kind of what I want to see, and hopefully they get back to that. But it is a passing league now, so I could be wrong, but I'm kind of optimistic that's the way they're going to go about it next year.
Yeah, I mean, for Saquon Barkley, I think they need to rely on him and play to his strengths. And Pat Shurmur did the exact opposite last season. They ran him between the tackles way too much. They were, power rushing him up the gut, and he is not a power rusher. He is essentially a scat back with elite attributes. He is best when he's in the open field and he has time to make his decision, which is, I think, kind of what you said in the I formation. They're going to do a lot of pitch plays, I think. I think they're going to utilize 12 personnel a lot, maybe have a fullback back there to lead the way. But I think they're going to do outside the tackles a lot more this year and really give him that open space to make decisions and actually break inside or out. Because we saw him bounce it outside a lot in his rookie season, and he did really well doing that. That was one of his best attributes. And that was actually one of his biggest concerns going into the NFL, was his tendency to bounce outside and actually get stuck out there. But he's so elite in the open field, you have to give him the ability to make plays. If you're running him up the gut every time, he has no room to make plays. What is he going to jump back every single time, stiff arm a guy on the ground, and run around to the boundaries? It doesn't work. Especially with a weak offensive line, with a better offensive line this year, Andrew Thomas involved, and Will Hernandez probably playing at a better level with better players around him. We should see a better Saquon Barkley, and he's going to be coming back healthy as well. So my final, conclusion here is that I think they're going to be running outside the tackles a little bit more. They're going to have leading fullbacks and have Toilolo also leading the way. They're going to have a lot of blockers in front of Barkley, so it gives him time and the ability to decide where he wants to go, instead of running it up the gut and hoping he can blast through Leonard Fournette style. Well, not really Leonard Fournette, but Ezekiel Elliott style. So I think they're going to have to do a little bit of different things revolving around Barkley. But we'll do one more question here. Let's see. Okay. I guess we'll go with this one because I kind of want to stick on the offense. Actually, we'll do two more questions because another really good one. Edu Manfredo, I don't know if that's his actual name, but what is your sincere expectation for Garrett's work or Garrett's offense, realistically?
A lot of running the football and play action. I think play action is really the key to it because I think he probably learned really quickly last year with Dak Prescott that's what quarterbacks find a lot. It makes throwing the ball a lot easier when you play action and then you have the defense slightly out of place. Dak Prescott took a huge jump last year, and I think it's because they were implementing so much play action. They threw the ball a lot more last year, and like you said, it probably has a lot to do with Kellen Moore. So if he is taking things from Kellen Moore's offense, definitely some more play action, and I think Daniel Jones was really good off of play action last year. That was definitely one of his more impressive traits. So hopefully they recognize that and they maximize that this year with Jason Garrett's offense.
I expect them to try and limit mistakes as much as possible and, limit the turnovers and stuff like that, running some bootlegs and just some simple run plays, control the clock. I don't expect them to do a bunch of take the top off the defense type plays and going deep. I know they have Darius Slayton, but you look at the rest of the Giants receivers and Sterling Shepard, Golden Tate specifically are guys that just run these intermediate routes, and you have Daniel Jones, who's a very accurate intermediate passer. So if they want to play to their players' strengths like they've been saying all offseason, I think running some short passing plays would be a good option, and of course running the ball a lot as well.
Right. So I think you guys pretty much hit on the head. I think they're going to run a lot in 12 personnel, so we're going to see a lot of Saquon Barkley. I think Daniel Jones is going to be looking to Saquon Barkley a lot more frequently, and they're not going to play a really deep game. It's going to be more intermediate, high probability success rate passes, which is where Daniel Jones thrives in. He's very accurate in the intermediate range game. They'll take a few shots downfield with Darius Slayton and Golden Tate, but I think it's going to be really centered around like maybe 20 yards, like in a 20-yard span. That's where they're really going to do a lot of mesh routes and crossing patterns. So with that being said, I think Garrett's offense is going to rely a lot on blocking. They need to have a good offensive line, which is a big reason why Dallas's offense was so successful last season. If you give Daniel Jones time, he will make plays. He can run the ball too. He can escape the pocket. If you clear out everybody and you get guys downfield as well, even in the intermediate game, it allows the quarterback to move around a little bit and allows him to make high probability throws even on the run. So we should expect to see a lot of that kind of thing, that kind of stuff. But I'm pretty excited to see what he does with this offense, especially if he takes concepts from Kellen Moore. There is a lot of good stuff there. And if he doesn't, it would be malpractice against the Giants, who just brought him in to do that exactly, so it seems. But the last question I want to hit on, which is actually really cool, who is the ultimate guest you would love to have on the pod by Brian Stever?
I'll say Daniel Jones. I think that would be really awesome to have him on. Obviously, he's the new face of the franchise as the quarterback, and he seems to have like a really awesome personality. Every time you hear him talk in the media, he's really friendly and seems really easy to talk to, so that would be good for us. And I think he'd like us. I think we're pretty fun to talk to, and I would like to be friends with Daniel Jones. I think he's a cool guy, so I'll say Daniel Jones.
For me, I'm probably going to steal yours. Eli Manning for me, easily. I mean, there's so many memories of him growing up and just like an idol. I'd probably be in awe. Like, I don't get too starstruck about people, but if we were talking to Eli Manning, which probably won't ever happen, but if it did, I'd be pretty starstruck about it.
I'll make it happen.
It could happen, hopefully.
I'll make it happen.
So many good memories and, stories he can tell that, he's probably never even told before, and, so many good pranks and stuff that I'm sure he's pulled off in the locker room, a lot of funny stories and stuff like that. The guy's had such a tremendous career, and I think it would be really cool to pick his brain for an episode.
I'll say real quick, Alex, before you go, I did consider Eli Manning as my option, but I'm too afraid that I would be too in awe and starstruck, and I'd like freeze up and not be able to talk. So I was like, Daniel Jones, he's a little newer. I feel like I could talk to him better.
That's a good answer. However, I think I would go with Michael Strahan, and the reason is nice. I think he could tell Eli's stories better than Eli. He is so outgoing. And he just, he what is he, like a host on Good Morning America now or something?
Yep.
The guy is doing it all, and I feel like he is the type of person that would really give some good stories and put some energy in it. And all of the games that he played in with Eli, those big ones, he would give some really good answers, and I would love to just feed off his energy and really talk. I think he would be incredible. And if anyone, is interested in this type of thing, they're doing a lot of cool donations with the Giants. And one of the things that they're doing, this is actually probably kind of hurting myself because I also did this, but if you go to Phil Simms' Twitter, you can see that they actually posted a link. This is giving back to New York City and fighting coronavirus. And essentially, you can donate us whatever amount you like. I think they have a few options, but you get to essentially be a part of this raffle. And the prize is unbelievable. You get to play a 4v4 football game in your backyard or at the Giants facilities with Eli Manning, Michael Strahan, Justin Tuck, and Phil Simms. And the coaches.
Touch, though. They're not tackling us, right?
Yeah, it's hand. It's two-hand touch. Don't get crazy, Mike. I'm not trying to get my head rattled.
No, they would kill me.
Oh, they would kill us. But that's an insane prize to win. And the best part is, well, not the best part, but another awesome part is you get your own Giants Super Bowl ring. They give you a Super Bowl ring with diamonds and everything. Might not be the real one with worth $50,000, but it's a pretty dang good good gift, and you get to have dinner with all of them. So if we win that, I'm putting it out there right now. If we win, Mike and Anthony will obviously be involved, and one other lucky person that's listening to the podcast will also get involved. So if you hear this, leave a 5-star review. And I will see it because you can literally have proof that you said it, that you saw this and you heard it. So if you're listening in right now at the end of the episode and we win, one of you guys will be a part of this, which is pretty incredible. You get to meet all these awesome Giants fans, or rather Giants greats, and be a part of dinner with us and everything. So that'll be an insane gift to win if you hear that. So make sure to leave that 5-star review, and I want to give you guys the last say before we close out.
I'm going to say I really hope that we win that because, like I said, I'd be really starstruck meeting Eli, but catching a pass from Eli and Simms and talking with Strahan and all of them, that would just be, unbelievable. It's a once-in-a-lifetime thing. And
can you one-hand catch Eli?
Definitely, and that would be the goal. I'm going to take a video of me one-hand catching and send it to all my friends, and that would be really awesome. And also, I want to say real quick that your choice of having Michael Strahan on the podcast is really good because, like you said, he's a host for 30 different shows at this point in his career, so he would probably have a lot of tips for us, and he'd probably help us out a lot. So that'd be a good one. And so I'll close by myself and say, stay safe, everybody. Go leave us a good review, and hopefully you can win, and we win, and we can all play football with Eli Manning together. So.
Yeah, that's the opportunity of a lifetime. I feel like you cannot pass on that. If we were fortunate enough to win that, I'm not expecting it, but if it did happen, that would be awesome, obviously. And stay safe, and thanks for tuning in, guys.
I'm fully expecting to win this, by the way. I'm putting it out there. I'm manifesting this victory. Manifesting.
I'll take it. Okay. Yeah, sign us up right now.
Okay, I will. No problem. Regardless, thank you guys. Thank you guys. I really appreciate everyone that tuned in. Make sure to leave us a great review. We love to hear from you and answering your questions on Twitter in the mailbag sections. So thank you for that again. Stay safe out there and make sure to watch out for your loved ones. We're slowly opening up the country again. We're almost back to normal. Not almost, but we're getting there. And we're surviving this together. So, if you're listening, thanks for tuning in and being a part of this awesome community.